The lake was a mirror of glass at dawn, shrouded in a soft silver mist. As the first light of day kissed the water's surface, an old fisherman named Thomas was mending his nets. His routine, etched by decades of habit, was broken by an unusual sight. There, nestled amongst the reeds, a simple wicker basket bobbed gently in the current. Curiosity tugged at him, stronger than any fish on his line. He waded into the cool water, his worn boots sinking into the soft mud, and reached for the basket. As he drew it closer, his breath caught in his throat. "Oh my," he whispered, his voice a gravelly mix of shock and wonder. "There's a baby inside." Tucked beneath a small damp blanket, a tiny infant lay sleeping, its chest rising and falling in a fragile rhythm. The child was cold, shivering slightly in the morning air. But what truly astonished Thomas was the sentinel standing guard beside the floating cradle. A swan, majestic and white, watched him with an unnerving stillness. Its long neck was arched, its black eyes intelligent and focused. As Thomas reached for the baby, the swan didn't flee. Instead, it spread its wings, just a fraction, a subtle, protective gesture. It was a silent, powerful warning and a plea all at once. "Were you watching over him?" Thomas asked, his voice barely a whisper, addressing the magnificent bird as if it were an old friend. The swan simply tilted its head, its gaze soft and knowing. It was an answer without words, a confirmation that resonated deep in the old fisherman's soul. In that quiet moment, an unspoken pact was formed between man, bird, and the mysterious child of the lake. Thomas knew he couldn't leave the baby. He carefully lifted the infant, wrapping him in his own dry coat, and turned toward his small cottage, feeling the weight of a new, unexpected purpose settle upon his shoulders. As he walked away, he glanced back. The swan was still there, a lone white figure against the growing light, its watch not yet over. Thomas named the baby Noah. Life in the small cottage by the lake, once a quiet, solitary existence, was now filled with the sounds of a child. And with those sounds came a daily visitor. Every morning, without fail, the swan would appear at the water's edge, a silent, graceful presence. She would glide back and forth, her eyes fixed on the cottage, waiting. It was a strange and beautiful ritual. When little Noah would cry, his infant wails echoing across the quiet landscape, a soft, melodic call would answer from the lake. The swan's gentle honks would drift through the open window, a unique and surprisingly effective lullaby that often soothed the baby back to sleep. Thomas would watch this, a smile playing on his lips. He'd pick up Noah, rocking him gently in his arms. "Seems you've made a friend, little one," he'd chuckle, carrying the baby out onto the porch. As soon as they appeared, the swan's behavior would change. She would launch into the air, her powerful wings beating a steady rhythm. She would circle high above the cottage, a brilliant white guardian against the vast blue sky, always keeping them in sight. Her flight was a declaration, a promise of protection that Thomas came to rely on. The bond between the child and the bird was a mystery, a piece of lake magic that had woven itself into their lives. The villagers would sometimes whisper, wondering at the old fisherman and the strange, constant presence of the swan, but Thomas paid them no mind. He knew, with a certainty he couldn't explain, that this was no ordinary bird. She was Noah's guardian, a gift from the lake itself. The seasons turned, and Noah grew from a babe in arms to a toddling boy, his first steps taken on the soft grass by the water's edge. The swan was his constant companion. She would swim alongside the shore as he played, her head held high, ever watchful. He would giggle and point, his small hands reaching for her, his first word not da-da, but a gurgled sound that sounded remarkably like swan. Their connection was the talk of the small lakeside community, a local legend in the making. Thomas would often sit on his porch, carving small wooden birds, and watch them, a deep sense of peace settling over him. He never learned where the baby came from, and he had stopped asking. Noah was his son, and the Swan was his family. Then came the storm. It wasn't a summer squall, but a tempest, a furious assault of wind and rain that seemed to rise from the very depths of the lake. The sky turned a bruised purple, and the water, usually so placid, became a churning, angry beast. Thunder cracked like the sky was breaking apart, and the wind howled, rattling the windows of the little cottage. Inside, Thomas was trying to comfort Noah, who was terrified by the violent noise. The boy's cries were sharp and piercing, a tiny sound against the storm's fury. Suddenly, a gust of wind, stronger than the rest, tore open the front door, slamming it against the wall. In that chaotic moment, the lantern on the table flickered and died, plunging the room into near darkness. When Thomas managed to relight it, his heart stopped. The cradle by the window, where Noah had been just moments before, was empty. "Noah!" he screamed, his voice swallowed by the roar of the storm. Panic, cold and sharp, seized him. He stumbled outside, into the blinding rain, his shouts lost in the wind. His eyes scanned the darkness, searching for any sign of his son. And then he saw it. A flash of white against the black churning waves. It was the Swan, flying low and desperate, her great wings struggling against the gale. And clutched carefully in her beak was a small bundle. He ran, his old legs burning, his feet slipping in the mud. He followed the determined bird toward the old overturned boat on the shore. There, with a final exhausted beat of her wings, the Swan landed. She gently, so gently, laid the baby on a patch of grass sheltered by the hull. Noah was trembling, soaked and frightened, but he was alive. He was safe. Thomas fell to his knees, his relief so profound it felt like a physical blow. You saved him," he choked out, his voice breaking with emotion. The Swan looked at him, her feathers matted and heavy with rain. She simply bowed her head, a gesture of profound grace and humility. As the first light of dawn began to break, the storm finally exhausted itself, its anger fading into a weary sigh. The Swan looked at Noah one last time, then at Thomas. She spread her magnificent battered wings and with a powerful push launched into the pale, washed-out sky, disappearing into the clouds. She never returned. Years passed. The storm became a memory, a story told on quiet nights. Noah grew into a strong, kind young man, with eyes the color of the lake on a clear day and a spirit as free as the birds that flew over it. He had no memory of the Swan, but he felt her presence in the pull of the water, in the whisper of the wind through the reeds. He became a fisherman, like Thomas, his life intertwined with the lake that had given him to the world. Thomas grew old, his hands gnarled but his heart full. He never told Noah the full story of his arrival or of the storm. It was a secret he kept with the lake. But every year, on the anniversary of the day he found the basket, a single, perfect white feather would appear on Noah's windowsill. No one ever saw how it got there. It was just there. A silent message, a yearly promise. Noah would pick it up, a curious smile on his face, feeling a connection he couldn't quite name. But Thomas knew. He would watch his son, his heart swelling with a love as deep and as endless as the lake itself, and he would whisper to the empty air, "She's still watching over you, lad. She always will be." The lake remained calm, its surface golden in the setting sun, holding its secrets and its eternal silent promises. Thank you for watching our story today. If you were moved by the tale of Noah and his guardian, please give this video a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming stories. We'll see you next time.